And what they found that these companies had at that time, as you might imagine, now they think about the companies I just mentioned, millions of customers, right? And have to get these communications out. They would have one whole set of systems or a big system of lots of programs that were integrated together and cobbled sometimes together with some acquired software to do their bills or invoices. And they had another big system over here to do all their letters. And maybe another system or set of systems to do other types of communications. Very siloed environments, different platforms. So you've got mainframe environments and Unix environments and a whole different set of software for both of those. And then, of course, if you want to well, sending out those documents back at that time electronically was not really being thought about, other than it was coming someday. But to create those documents for printed output versus electronic output is a whole different set of requirements, as Chris knows probably well, better than anyone. So what they, that's where really their whole vision for something has got to be better came from. And in fact, the first thing they did was they spun off, and this is probably, Chris, this is probably when you came into Streamweaver days, right? So from what they found in the consulting business, they spun off another company, which was the second of the three, that developed a software product called Streamweaver, and this is where Chris was involved. And that was a product to help these companies deal with this big, massive problem that they had of all these different systems. So specifically, a couple of examples. Think about, all right, you're a American Express, and so you've got a print run one night, and you're printing millions of statements that are going out to customers or bills, and the printer goes down. So where did it stop? Where did it go down? Where do we bring it back up? How many invoices were lost? Huge, huge, costly problem for these companies. This Streamweaver was part of, one of the capabilities of it was to help these companies deal with those kind of issues and recreate those lost bills, if you will, on the fly. Other things, if these companies wanted to make changes to that, to any of those mission critical documents, it was months and months and months, sometimes a year long effort. So huge problem out there that they solved. So they also, the other part of the vision though, was that marketing had no way to get messages out to on these most read communications that are sent to customers. So the one thing you will open right in your mail, or now maybe in your email, is your bill or your a statement or your insurance policy or something like that. Well, what a great channel for marketing to use to promote new products or services. Well, even the idea of it, never went very far in most companies because it was just almost an impossibility. But that was also part of their vision, was to create something that would allow marketing to work with IT so that they could do that. So they ended up selling both of the PDR companies. The Streamweaver company they sold to Pitney Bowes, and the consulting part of the business they sold to a company called Broadvision. Made lots of money. They went to Pitney for a couple of years, but had this vision and were anxious to get out and start building what everybody told them was absolutely crazy to do. That it was just like an impossible thing to try and accomplish. But they did it anyway. They used their own money, and of course some of the advantages of doing that and not getting VC money is one of the things. I met with Davis not long ago, and he said you think about money and spending money a whole lot differently when it's your own. than when it's somebody else's. And they didn't have advisors. They didn't feel like they needed advisors. So that's what they did. And they had a 2-year non-compete with Pitney Bowes, so they couldn't be out selling or working in that industry anyway. So they started out in Davis's basement in January of 1998. They brought Chris along with them, and they started to create and draw out the whole architecture for this big software platform that would replace all of that I just mentioned. So they set out to create one software system, could create any type of document for customers, mission critical documents, would allow marketing to easily create business rules that would drive messages to go onto these documents that were sent in relevant messages depending on who you are. Could the same program would be able, or same application would be able to deliver that document via print mail or electronically without having to go and make any changes. So all of this stuff that, again, people just told them, you guys are out of your mind. And they created a list of 15 things they'd have to overcome, and working with Chris. Chris, was it just the 3 of you guys, or did you have, was Rob involved at that time? Or?
No, Rob was like 2000.
Yeah, I
I
thought
think we
so.
started getting some other developers involved like around fall of '98.
Okay. So that's what they did, and they also had this goal of driving what was then a company called Group One, had the #1 software product out there, and it didn't do all of this. What it did is it focused on certain types of documents, like invoices for very high volume, but certainly couldn't go anywhere near all of what I just mentioned. So that was their goal. That's where they started Davis's basement, and that was in January of 1998. By November of 1999, they had the first product. They were ready to go show it. So they figured all of that out, the impossible that everybody told them they couldn't do. And very funny story about their first trade show, which will be a good one, over beers some night. But they went to a trade show called Explore, which was really big in this industry, and didn't want to spend any more money than they had to, so built their own booth in Davis's garage. And then there's a pretty hilarious story. I wasn't a part of it then, but how they got the booth down to the show and got it on the show floor, and bypassing all of the union people. Yeah, could have been arrested. But, so they set up their booth, and lo and behold, the first people that came to see what they had built were their customers from the PDR days. So the old adage of what goes around comes around. You don't want to ever make anybody mad in your career, because you never know when you're going to come up against them or with them again. Those customers ended up being absolutely key to this success of Extreme, because they became, a number of them became their early adopters. So with this story, that was a key part of this role. And I realize also, I didn't mention this earlier, but many of you are building B2C or cloud computing or social media type technologies today. And this, of course, is a B2B story that is for very large companies, but hopefully you can, some of the same concepts and principles that they figured out and we figured out together, you can still apply. So you may not have some of those early adopters like they did, but you certainly want to spend time on getting customers happy quickly, which is the third point on this slide, and that's crossing the chasm. I think Jim Clifton talked about crossing the chasm a couple of months ago in his talk, This is, if you haven't heard that, Jeffrey Moore wrote a book called Crossing the Chasm, and then followed with one called Inside the Tornado. And if you're not familiar with it, Crossing the Chasm, it talks about there's so many startups, so many companies out there that have great ideas, I'm sure everybody here has tremendous ideas, but the real challenge, of course, is how do you get to that next level, and how do you cross the chasm? So many fall off into the chasm. And that is a very, very important part of this whole story, I think, that I want to make sure that I pass along. From the very beginning, well, let me go back actually to the trade show. So some of those first customers came, saw it, were amazed by what they had built, couldn't believe it. One of those early customers was, or past customers, was a guy from a big print service bureau. And they created all kinds of different communications for lots of different industries. And he said, Davis, this is incredible, but I can't even just test it until you at least add 6 or 7 of these other capabilities. Well, by the end of January in 2000, so just really less than 2 months later, they, along with Chris, had done that, had added it. So they created a platform that would make it very easy they knew there would be lots of enhancements, and they needed something that would be very easy to enhance it and customize, or allow customers to customize on their own. So they were able to do that very quickly. Well, when they brought it back and showed it to this customer, his name was Patrick, he just couldn't believe it. It was one of the early adopters, installed it, and literally the first sale of the product was to a big telecom company. I think it was the largest at the time in France, called Bouygues Telecom, and that was in February of 2000. So their first version was out in November '99. First sale was in February of 2000 to a company in Paris, France. In March was the second customer, and that was paying customer. That was a big credit card company in France. And then the third was the first company to acquire it in the U.S., and that was Fidelity Investments out of Covington, Kentucky. And that's what really got things rolling. And that's when I started, right as we had completed that sale. So it was a good time to come in. But going back to the chasm then for a moment, from the very beginning, Davis and Dan both equally, the whole point of everything was not just to sell to new customers. It was to get these customers using the product successfully and be happy with it. And so that became our culture from the beginning, and I think that always grows top down. But it was so important because it is what allowed us to cross the chasm, at least what I believe. We had a goal of having 10 of those such customers in that first year, and we had about 15 total customers. There were probably close to 10 or 10 that were using the software. But it was 24/7, everybody that worked in the company at that point, and everybody's whole, all of our energy was on getting those customers happy. So, very important part of the whole story. Once you have those happy customers, or customers you can point to that are successfully using your product, whatever it is, or service, that is what I believe to be the first step along getting to that next level. Also, this was disruptive technology. It really became disruptive probably 3 years after that or so. But it was disruptive from the very beginning in that these early customers, they just couldn't believe. This was a leaps and bounds above any type of software they'd ever worked with to create these type of documents.